Good evening, everyone. I'm Simon Green. I'm the Chief Executive of the YMCA in Milton Keynes, and I'm delighted to see some of our young people here today, and I'm particularly delighted to see some of our young men here today. But I'd like to speak to you tonight from a personal capacity. When I was invited to speak at this event, I wanted to find something wise or profound to share, some new perspective, something clever. But as I thought about it, I realised that's not what I've got to offer. What I can share with you is a personal story from my own past, and it isn't a story I particularly wish to tell you. There isn't a hero, and I might be guilty of oversharing, but it is true, and it does speak to this issue, so I will share it. When I was a young man, my sister had a number of violent boyfriends. Louise had many good qualities. She was caring, she was fun, she laughed easily, and at her best she was the life and soul of the party. But she was also troubled. She'd been bullied and victimised at school, and she fell into drug addiction. And she gravitated towards abusive men. I guess she saw something in them, and I guess they saw something in her. Maybe it was her vulnerability, maybe it was theirs. The relationship she had and her behaviours made it difficult for me to have a relationship with her. She was erratic, and spending time with her often meant spending time with people that I was wary of. And she could always tell that that's how I felt, so she wouldn't reach out for me. And that's how it was for quite a long time. One day she got a new boyfriend. I'd recently started going out with my now wife. And in an attempt to build bridges, my mum had the idea of getting the four of us surprise tickets to the theatre. I don't remember the show. The problem was my wife recognised the new boyfriend. She knew him from school. He was violent and disruptive. He was from a violent and disruptive family. We went along anyway, doing our best to make it work. We picked them up, and as a foursome we went to the theatre, the one next door. We had a drink, we exchanged pleasantries, we took our seats. Midway through the first half, the boyfriend got up and went outside, and a minute later my sister followed. A few minutes after that, it was the intermission, and my wife and I went outside. We'd ordered some intermission drinks, and we found my sister and her boyfriend, and we joined them. But they were being very loud. It seems they'd not only drunk our intermission drinks, but they'd drunk everybody else's too. They were very drunk. I was annoyed, and maybe we should have left at that point. But my wife and I went back into the second half of the show, and when we came back out, they were even more drunk and barely comprehensible. Her boyfriend in particular was being rude and hostile to nearby strangers. I got more angry. I told Louise that we'd take her home, but not her boyfriend. He would have to find his own way back to where he lived. We took Louise back and we helped her into her house. But as we got to leave, her boyfriend appeared in the road. She lived in a cul-de-sac and there was no way out without passing him. So I beckoned for him to move from the road, but he stood rather aggressively, swaying slightly. My wife told me to get into the car. I got in and we tried to pass him. He was beckoning for me to get out and fight him. He was a big guy and he looked dangerous, and I didn't fancy my chances or want to fight. He tried my door and my wife tried to drive us away, but somehow we got onto the bonnet and he refused to get off. We sat there slightly comically for what felt like an age, and by now my wife was losing her temper. She shouted at him to get off, she swore at him, she bibbed her horn, and when he refused to move, she drove a few metres, stopped again and asked him to get off, and again he refused. This happened several times. She then put her foot down and drove to the end of the road, braking fast and trying to throw him off, but he clung onto the window wipers. And again he refused to get off. So we set off in a slow and rather bizarre drive across Milton Keynes with a very drunk, very violent man hanging onto the bonnet. I think our idea was actually to head for the police station. Every half mile or so we'd stop and invite him off, and he would refuse and slur another threat. It was cold. Eventually, after a few miles, he realised the situation and he got off. We left him by the side of the road and headed back to get my sister. She didn't answer the door. The house was dark and I didn't have a key. We banged and shouted front and back, but she was obviously in a deep sleep. And eventually we left, shaken up and incredulous at what had just happened. But in retrospect, we shouldn't have left. In retrospect, we shouldn't have taken her back in the first place. And the next day, we found out that after we'd left him, the boyfriend had headed back to Louise's house. He smashed his way through the front window and he attacked her and fractured her skull. For this, he was sent to prison, but it took a long time for that to happen, and Louise was never quite the same again. In theory, domestic violence and violence against women and girls is simple and straightforward. It's a bad and evil act, but it's also complicated. There are relationships involved, emotions. For family and friends, there are also your own lives to consider. I don't blame myself for what happened to my sister, but should I have taken her home that night? No. Should I have left her in that house after what happened? No. Should I have called the police? Yes. My sister needed help, but I didn't properly see it. I didn't understand the extent of the danger. I support the White Ribbon campaign because we need to shine a light on this issue so that everybody knows the society will not stand for this appalling behaviour. I support the White Ribbon campaign because it needs all of us to stand up and be counted on this issue. It's down to the rest of us, friends, family, colleagues, acquaintances, to see it and to help stop it. YMCA Milton Keynes is a White Ribbon accredited organisation. We recognise the importance of supporting this campaign against violence against women and girls. Thank you.